I am Dr. Preeti Shrodkar, an assistant professor at KBS, and I would be serving as the host for today. Just a couple of reminders before we begin. The first is, of course, to keep your self on mute at all times until and unless you have unmuted to ask questions. The second, of course, that you're most welcome to start your videos um, at any time that you wish to, especially while interacting with people and asking questions, because we know the facelessness of the medium. And as communicators, we also understand the value of seeing each other. So please feel free to chip in at any time with questions. There will be a time for questions after the plenary session and after the paper presentations. We look forward to you participating actively in that. You are also most welcome to put your questions in the chat box. Having said this, before I will hand over to Dr. Mala, but before I do so, while we all know Dr. Mala in some capacity or the other, it would be unfair not to say anything at all about her. A very dynamic principal of Dr. BMN College. Dr. Mala, of course, is known as a very erudite and respected academician and researcher, and a good friend to a lot of people who are on this group. Right, so it is always a pleasure to listen to Dr. Mala, and today we are going to have her setting the tone of our 2 half-day conference. So over to you, Dr. Mala.
Thank you so much, Dr. Preeti. And good afternoon and greetings from Dr. BMN College of Home Science and the Kohinoor School of Business Studies. On behalf of my fellow convener, Dr. Preeti Shrodkar, and organizing committee members, Ms. Minuti Nayak, Ms. Melina Pereira, Ms. Huda Said, and Ms. Mary Salat, I extend a very warm welcome to our keynote speaker, Dr. Hutoxi Randeria.
Thank you.
For the plenary session this afternoon, Dr. Bhavani. Our speaker for tomorrow's plenary session, Professor Vibha Surana. Our panelists, also our chair for this afternoon, Dr. Seema Sharma, our panelists for tomorrow, paper presenters, and all participants. Special greetings are extended to delegates who have joined us from various parts of Maharashtra, the states of Rajasthan, Gujarat, Haryana, and Karnataka, as well as our international friends from Germany, Romania, and Dubai. Let me at the outset share as to why we decided to title this conference as Communication at the Crossroads. The COVID-19 pandemic and the ensuing lockdown, announced on the 24th of March 2020, put a sudden halt to the physical interaction between teachers and students, which is so essential for communication skills. We were all compelled to shift overnight from the classroom mode to the online mode, and this undoubtedly presented multiple obstacles and challenges. The shift in pedagogical practices has given us the opportunity to learn newer ways of navigating both content and medium. 10 months down the line, in January 2021, we are still faced with uncertainty in terms of when and how we will go back to the academic way of functioning as we knew it in the pre-pandemic age. However, I think we are all in consonance that the shift to functioning in a virtual classroom will become an integral mode of education in the future. And we are therefore at crossroads on how can we proceed from here in an efficient and innovative manner. The English departments of both Dr. BMN and the Kohinoor School of Business Studies felt it was important for like-minded language and communication skill teachers to come together on a common platform and initiate a conversation on the range of challenges faced, experiments conducted, and innovations that have been evolving. This 2 half-day conference is intended to create a space for the sharing of the kinds of processes that have worked in enhancing communication skills online. Our invited speakers will be touching on exciting models that can be explored and adapted by fellow teachers. At the same time, imperative issues such as how do we meet restrictions of technology and infrastructure ought to be addressed, especially since a larger number of our students neither have access to laptops nor to continuous Wi-Fi connectivity. We are hopeful that at the end of 2 days of deliberation, we would have initiated a move to build networks so as to collaborate with each other in terms of teaching, learning, and evaluation strategies and exploring potential areas for further research. We look forward to your comments and questions as we go along so as to make the conference as participatory as possible. And it is for this reason that we decided to restrict the number of participants to only 80. It gives me great pleasure to get the conference going by introducing our keynote speaker, Dr. Hutoxi Randeria, who is a senior language consultant and corporate trainer at the British Council Examination and English Language Services Private Limited. I've been fortunate to have a long association with Dr. Hutoxi, who was a faculty member at the SNDT Women's University English Department and is well recognized for her expertise in English language teaching. Hutoxi has a remarkable academic record, having been a triple gold medalist in MA in the specialization of English language teaching, and her PhD thesis were awarded the best thesis in the field of Indo-American research by the American Research Society in 1996. She has taught at UG and PG levels before joining the British Council's section as a language consultant and corporate trainer. And we are indeed grateful to Dr. Randeria, as also to Dr. Bhavani and Professor Vibhas Surana, to our chairpersons, Dr. Seema Sharma, Dr. Paramita Chakravarti, to our eminent panelists who will be with us today, for immediately agreeing to be part of this conference. And I now invite Dr. Randeria to deliver the keynote address on the topic of emerging technologies in the virtual English language classroom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mala Pandurang. I don't know whether you remember, the first time we met each other was in your Canadian Studies classroom. I was your student there, and that was our first meeting, and I was duly impressed with the way you delivered your lecture on the book that you taught us. And that's how we began our association. So it's wonderful that today we meet as peers. Thank you very much for the glowing introduction. I think Dr. Pandurang left out a key piece of information while introducing me, and that is that I am a mother of 2 college kids who are receiving education at home during the lockdown. And if you know how we function at home, this is exactly what happens in my household at 8:30 in the morning. So online lectures for my kids start at 9:30 a.m. My daughter's alarm rings at 8:30 a.m. in the morning. It's on snooze until 8:45 a.m. A hurried breakfast later, she goes for a bath at 9:15 a.m. with instructions to my mother-in-law to log in into her Zoom account. She's out by 9:28 a.m., by which time my grandmother has logged her into the class. The laptop that she works on is put on the dressing table, and she proceeds to get ready for her next class. In the meantime, we have my son. His alarm rings at 9:15 a.m. in the morning, and since by then the grandmother is busy logging in to the sister's account, He duly logs into his own account very dutifully at 9:25 a.m., switches off the video, leaves the audio on, puts an alarm for 10:20 a.m., which is the next class, and happily goes back to sleep. This is how online classes at college happen most of the time for a lot of our students. This is one end of the spectrum. At the other end of the spectrum is the grimmer reality, which is that the online education has sidelined and outlined tens of thousands of children from the education system because, as Dr. Pandurang rightly pointed out, they do not have access to the technology needed for online education. The disruption of the delivery of education, or rather the rupture in the system, and the divide between the haves of the technological world and the have-nots is as big a tragedy of the pandemic as a horrific number of deaths due to the deadly virus. And I have some very grim figures to share with you. The Center for Monitoring Indian Economy estimates on unemployment shot from 8.4% in mid-March to 23% in April 2020, and at the moment, our unemployment levels in the country are 57%. According to a survey by NCRT, 27% students do not have access to smartphones or laptops to attend online classes, while 28% students and parents believe intermittent or lack of electricity is one of the major concerns for teaching and learning. If we look at another survey, which was conducted by the Business Insider, 37% of students are currently attending online classes, which means 63% of students are outside the ambit of formal education at the moment. And the plight of the girl child is absolutely abysmal in this country. They have been moved out of the system altogether. Therefore, the focus of this two-day seminar, Communication at the Crossroads, Adapting to the New Normal, is very pertinent. It is absolutely critical that we engage at the level of pedagogy and classroom interaction to ideate on how to make online teaching accessible, relevant, and relatable to the realities of the situation in which we currently are. The biggest struggle that teachers face in this online education scenario, to my mind, is lack of engagement. Learners are disengaged because of lack of supervision, lack of interesting content, and lack of peer interaction. Teachers are disengaged because they know that the lecture method is not working on Zoom and Google Meet and Microsoft Teams, but they don't know or are not willing to know what else will work. Therefore, when Exley and Denick, in their book, Small Group Teachings, Tutorials, Seminars, and Beyond, quoted an unknown source as saying, lecture is the transference of the notes of the lecturer to the notes of the student without passing through the brains of either, is very true in an online environment. In the light of the above, the big question that we as teachers must ask ourselves is the old lecture method or the chalk and talk method still valid in an Indian classroom in an online scenario? To my mind, an honest reflection is most likely to lead us to a negative answer to the above question. The challenge for teachers now is to reinvent the lecture, as it were, or in fact, to discard it altogether in exchange for more innovative teaching methodologies that will allow for some amount of learner engagement, learner autonomy, and learner satisfaction in these mentally challenging times. The key to any innovative approach to teaching online is, in my opinion, to create a sense of responsibility amongst learners for their own learning and fostering autonomy in a supportive environment. It needs to be much more than just active listening on the part of the learner. Every online class must have opportunities to inquire, to discuss, to problem solve, to debate, and to ideate on issues. And this becomes extremely pertinent for English teachers in particular, because we have the onerous task of teaching a language which in the Indian context remains aspirational for a lot of our learners. Like it or not, the mastery over the English language is closely linked with employability skills in our scenario. Language teaching in Indian context is not just the teaching of grammar or of listening, speaking, or reading and writing skills or of literature, but in a way, the teaching of life skills. This is one class where the lecture method will not work, and in fact is bound to fail spectacularly. So then, if not a lecture in the English class, what then? In-person classrooms too, I felt that the teacher-centric method, where the teacher talk time was more than the learner talk time like it is now, wasn't working. English language teaching was not happening effectively even then. And in an online transfer scenario where information transfer is only possible through a camera or through a video, the skills of speaking or writing, the productive skills particularly, become a Herculean challenge. Also, there is no learner autonomy in terms of pace, time, and place, which are actually non-negotiables in the teaching of a language. So in his book, Learning to Lead in Higher Education, Paul Ramsden lists 6 principles of key effective teaching. And when I design my classes, and particularly my lesson plans for online teaching, I follow this as a Bible. The 6 principles are interest and explanation, concern and respect for student and student learning, appropriate assessment and feedback, clear goals and intellectual challenge, independence, control and active engagement, and most importantly, learning from students. So if we look at the first 2, interest and explanation, these are the backbone of any lesson plan. If we arouse interest in an online class, we are able to engage with our learners better. The first 5 minutes of any class, of course, are the most important, because that's the hook with which you take in the student and his interest. How you explain the topic comes much later, because if the interest is lost, then however well you explain whatever it is that you wish to, will not reach the student. Therefore, engaging the students in the first 5 minutes in an online class is the key to having a successful online lesson. What we need to look at and answer is how we can arouse the interest in the topic that we are going to teach them on that particular day. The second and more important in our times right now is the concern and respect for student and student learning. Concern of their mental health. Because today we don't know what students are going through, what our learners are going through, what their mental state of mind is, and whether we are able to respect their mental health and achieve the targets of learning that we wish to do so in our learning through our lesson. The next one is, of course, appropriate assessment and feedback. That feedback is one of the key elements of any teaching in a language classroom. Feedback must be immediate, because otherwise learning errors get fossilized. And in an online class, giving feedback is by far the most challenging for a teacher. Because how do you deal with a situation where 150 mics are switched off, nobody wants to say a word, nobody wants to start their mics, and you want to give them feedback over language production that is not happening at all in your classroom. So that is something that you need to build into your lesson plan, an activity that will encourage not just feedback from you, but peer feedback. The next one, clear goals. It's important, and that is tied in with the respect for students and their learning. Because unless you respect your students' time and you tell them why they're there in your classroom and what is it that they are allowed to achieve in that class, and allowed is the word that I use, because sometimes our own teaching is inhibiting learning. And that is something, again, that we need to build into our lesson plan. How do we, in an online classroom, encourage intellectual challenge, building enough modules to encourage challenge levels, students at differing levels? We do not teach a homogeneous class. Our classes are heterogeneous in terms of the levels at which our learners are. So is our lesson able to intellectually challenge every student in the class, is something that we need to ask ourselves. The next key factor is independence, autonomy, learner control, and active engagement. Whatever lesson we design and however we present it in our classroom, does it lend itself to learner autonomy? Is it enabling the learner to understand, engage at his or her level without feeling inhibited, without feeling threatened? And finally, we as teachers must acknowledge that learners have greater mastery over the digital world than we do. That must be celebrated in the classroom, and they must be allowed the platform to showcase not just their language skills, but even their technological skills. Perhaps that will give them then the confidence to showcase their language skills. So maybe the starting point in an online classroom should be something that they are familiar with and something that they can teach us. And that could be the starting point of our lesson. I understand that this is a very tall order for most of us teachers who have our own challenges of working from home. We're not really equipped or trained for this kind of teaching. We're actually only used to show up in a physical classroom where there are traditional teaching aids, such as blackboards and whiteboards, where students sit in neat little rows in an orderly fashion, where we go up on stage and talk. Now we also have a stage, but it's the online platform. We have a camera lens through which we gauge at our students, and we have interactive boards, but we do not have learners who can be pushed into submission. And that is the key difference between online teaching and physical teaching. Excellently designed lesson plans have to be implemented. And for that, we need ways and means to harness technology and to deliver a perfectly designed lesson plans. Thankfully, for language teachers, we do not have to reinvent the wheel. There are already a range of pedagogical frameworks that have been designed to support learning using digital technologies online in settings that can provide a valuable scaffolding for active learning to happen within the English language teaching and learning framework. And one such intervention or emerging technique or teaching methodology that I would like to talk about today is the flipped classroom. I don't know whether you are familiar with the methodology of the flipped classroom. I have been using it very frequently in my teaching and learning scenario, and it has worked wonderfully for me. It's a blended learning approach to teaching. Just to give you a background, this technique was first used by Jonathan Bergman and Aaron Sams. They were two chemistry teachers in Woodland Park High School in Woodland Park, Colorado. And in their seminal book on the subject, Flip Your Classroom, Reach Every Student in Every Class Every Day, they explain the rationale, need, efficacy, and results of flipping the classroom. In the first chapter of the book, they write, and I quote them, "In our combined total of 37 years of teaching, we have been frustrated with students not being able to translate content from our lectures into useful information that would allow them to complete their homework. Then one day, Aaron had an insight that would change our world. It was one simple observation. The time when students really need me physically present is when they get stuck and need my individual help. They don't need me in the room with them to yak at them and to give them content. They can receive content on their own." And with this epiphany was born the flipped classroom. Basically, what the flipped classroom essentially means is that the teacher records the lecture at home and puts it up.
Hutoxi, you've gone on mute. Dr. Hutoxi, you've gone on mute.
Am I audible now? The
Yes,
question
you are.
that we
Thank
all
you.
ask each other all the time. The question
Yes,
of
you are.
2020. Yes. So sorry for that. What I meant, yeah, we were at the traditional class and the flipped class, the difference between the two, where the lecture, the traditional lecture, is delivered by the teacher from his or her home to the students at home. This is the homework bit. So when the students come to the class the next day, whether it's an online class or a physical class, they would have listened to the lecture in their own time at their own pace. And when they come to the class, they actually use the points of the lecture to work on activities that are for language production and language learning. So they're using the points in the lecture, in the pre-recorded video lesson, and they're coming to class and engaging with the teacher, with the facilitator, to produce content that is relevant, that is autonomous, and that is engaging in ways that are useful for them. So the class time is now devoted to answering learner queries, going over the key concepts once more if the students have found them difficult, and working on activities that actually reinforce the input lecture. And I have been using this all the time with my students. I deliver the lecture at home. I record it on my Zoom. I send the link to the students with the expectation that 30% of the students will have watched the video at home, and they come to class ready to discuss the lesson in the classroom. So my teacher talk time in the class is reduced to a great extent. And it is the onus is then on the learners to talk, to engage, to discuss, to do their group works, and to produce language that can help them achieve their goals. If you apply my screen has, Okay, so I'm just going to stop share and start share. I think there is a problem with my screen share.
Dr. Hutoxi, just a suggestion,
Mhm.
just keep moving
Yeah,
your mouse,
I know, I
If
know.
you're on a particular slide, it freezes otherwise.
Yes, I think it has frozen.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So basically, this is just another slide that tells you what the flipped classroom looks like before and after, where the students can check, where you can help the students check their work in real class time and are able to give them feedback, which is the crucial aspect of language learning in real time. And for me, that becomes an extremely crucial aspect of any language learning teaching scenario. The feedback, it must be immediate. Otherwise, there is fossilization of error. And that in a second language learning situation is very critical. So if we apply Bloom's taxonomy to the online teaching method in a flipped classroom, it works beautifully. The remembering and the understanding part of the lecture or of the class or of the learning process or of the lesson plan is done at home in an asynchronous manner. Whereas the applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating part, which are the higher order thinking skills, are handled inside the classroom where the teacher is the facilitator of learning process. The learning, these are the higher order thinking skills, the applying, the analyzing, the evaluating, and the creating. Using the online tools to do this is very easy. Your remembering of information can happen in terms of a video or in terms of the lecture notes that you've sent them. You can ask them to do their homework by searching on the web. They understand by summarizing, paraphrasing, explaining, and they come to class the next day and apply by group work, getting them into groups. In Zoom, we have the breakout rooms, and I'm a great advocate of breakout rooms, where at the beginning of the class, I group my students into the breakout rooms. I tell them who is in which breakout room. The whole schedule is sent to them a day before. And then I just I flip from one class, one breakout room to the other, checking on them when they're doing the activity that goes with that particular class. So it could be writing a diary, it could be a group discussion, it could be preparing a mind map of the lecture that I have given them the day before. It could be a creation of a photo book. It could be writing a poem. It could be writing an essay. It could be blogging and putting up their blog online. It could be vlogging. It could be writing a script that they could then produce as a video. They have Reels and TikTok and all these. They're really good at production of videos, and these could then be used in the classroom to produce language and for peer feedback. So this is a model that has worked for me, but please understand one thing. Do not use it just because I say so. Use it because you think it may work for your classroom. Because this is a blend of synchronous as well as asynchronous teaching, and it requires teachers and students to work together to create something new and beautiful in the classroom. The teacher is just a facilitator in the classroom and a teacher outside the classroom. So the role of the teacher is flipped. It's not just the lesson that I urge you to flip. It is your role that I would love to see flipped. The efficacy and effectiveness of any lesson that you decide, whether it's blended or traditional, synchronous or asynchronous, flipped or unflipped, must be evaluated and educated and evaluated on the 7 principles of good practice in undergraduate education by Arthur Chickering and Zelda F. Gamson. So what we have in our institution and in our scenario is a lot of team teaching. We divide the classroom teaching into team teaching, where one person is the teacher and the other person is a facilitator. And then there is peer observation of the two. So we do a lot of team teaching. And again, that works beautifully because we are able to assess each other all the time and provide feedback to one another to improve our lessons. And our feedback is generally based on these 7 principles, where whether the lesson that we taught in the flipped classroom was able to encourage greater contact between student and faculty, whether there is reciprocity and cooperation among the students as they do their works in groups and pairs, whether active learning was encouraged, whether the facilitator was able to provide prompt feedback, and whether the tasks were done in a timely manner. It's very easy to be ambitious, but it's very difficult to scale down that ambitions when you come across a very homogeneous group of students. You want them to have high expectations, and when you try something new, there are always very high expectations, but a facilitator must always know how to manage expectations in the classroom scenario. And overall, whatever we teach, we must be able to respect diversity in our classroom, whether it is in terms of language learning, whether it is in terms of the ways in which our students learn and the backgrounds that they come from. So one of the most effective methods and innovative methods, it's no longer innovative because we've been using it for a very long time now. I don't know whether any one of you here has used it. I'd be happy to take feedback from you if you have used it and how you have used it in your classrooms. I wish you happy flipping. And thank you very much for honoring me with this opportunity to deliver the keynote address. Thank you so much. I hope it has been of use to you, and maybe it can be the starting point of some amount of thinking and reflection on your part on how to deliver online lectures in a more innovative and engaging manner. Thank you very much, Dr. Mala Pandurang and Dr. Shirodkar.
Thank you, Dr. Randeria. That was really a very engaging presentation, as many people are also commenting in the chat box.
I must look at that.
Yeah, so there are people who are complimenting you, saying lovely presentation, and also saying that it has been extremely useful for them.
Thank you.
Yeah, so again, thank you, Dr. Hutoxi, for that lovely presentation. She highlighted for us some very, very important issues like the rising unemployment, the major challenges in India about, in the context of English language teaching or teaching in general in the first place, let alone English language teaching, right? But yet, as I think we have all learned in the last 9 months, we always make the most of the challenges that are offered to us and moved ahead. So she's given us solutions like the flipped classroom. She has told us how we can use the key principles to involve the students more into the classroom, how having a facilitator in the classroom often helps both in, getting the student to the next level and in of course, in having an evaluation of your teaching as well. What I really loved about what she said was that it is important to change your role from being a facilitator in the classroom to a teacher outside the classroom, right? So team teaching, um, flipped classrooms were all very important tips that she has given us. Importance of keeping students engaged through activities, and I think we can all really learn from that and sort of apply that to our classroom if we haven't already been applying them, right? So Dr. Hutoxi has also invited anybody to who has been using this to share their experience. So we have a minute or so with us. So in case anybody wants to share their experience, people can go ahead and do that. You could unmute yourself and share your experience. Okay, I think people are still warming up to the conference. So I will just share the experience that Minoti and I have. We are teaching together as a team. And for the past 15 years or so, since we moved to MET, we have been doing team teaching. And that has worked wonderfully well, especially in the context of skills, because the students get a sort of hands-on training. They're able to get a direct and immediate feedback, and they benefit with having two teachers in the class. While I must say that at some point it has shocked some of the leadership, we have persisted and carried on with it, and it has worked. So I would like to once again compliment Dr. Hutoxi for that lovely presentation, which all of us have enjoyed, and for those lovely tips as well, which we could all definitely use in our own classrooms as we move forward.
Thank you very
I think
much.
that our pleasure, Dr. Hutoxi. Right, and yes, I mean, in fact, this is a platform which helps us also, I mean, not only get new ideas, but also reinforce our ideas, because sometimes we're experimenting, trying new things, and we're not sure whether we are moving in the right direction. So sometimes hearing other people doing the same things and getting success becomes a very motivating and encouraging thing. So having said that, it has been an awesome beginning to the conference with that keynote address. And we will now move on to the plenary session, which, of course, Dr. Bhavani Sanjeeviraja is going to give us. But before I hand it over to Huda, I would like to just remind people that please ensure that your audios are on mute, because there has been during Dr. Hutokshi's presentation, a couple of audios were unmuted. All right. And also, I think a couple of people are mentioning they're facing audio issues. The audio is clear. So if you're facing such issues, please drop out and log back in, and you will address the problem. So I will hand over the proceedings to Huda, who is one of our organizing committee members from Dr. BMN College, and she would introduce Dr. Bhavani to us, and then we could carry on with the plenary session. Huda, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon to everyone present here today. I'm here to introduce Dr. Bhavani Sanjeeviraja, and all of you must have read about her in the brochure, but I'm just going to quickly do this so that the ones who missed it can catch up. Dr. Bhavani is an assistant professor of English at Christ, Bangalore, and has been with the institution for 10 years. She has an MPhil and PhD in ELT. She is passionate about language and literature teaching at various levels and takes deep interest in designing classroom activities. Today, Dr. Bhavani will be experientially discussing the tools and techniques of effective online communication. Welcome, Dr. Bhavani.
Good afternoon, and thank you for that welcome note, Huda. Thank you so much. My presentation is going to be more of an extension of the keynote. So I hope it will do justice to the requirement of this session. So here I go. Let me know if you're able to see my PowerPoint while I share the screen.
No, Dr. Bhavani, we can't even see you. I think your video has gone off as well.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
No, we
Your
can
video is
see the
off, but
PowerPoint
can-
now.
we can
Dr.
see the
Preeti,
PowerPoint
yeah,
and we can hear
see.
you.
Yeah, we can see it and hear you.
Okay, you're able to see the PowerPoint as well?
Yeah, we are
yes,
able to see the PowerPoint. We are able to hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, I think the video automatically closes. I hope.
No, we can see you now. That's
Okay.
great. Yes.
All right. Yes. Okay, so here we go with the presentation. All right. So here are some tools and techniques for effective online communication, and I'm going to make it an experiential narration because what we need today is someone validating the fact, look, I did this and it worked wonders in my class. And I'm sure a lot of us here are listening to this session to exclusively take away some advantages of using some of these available tools. When all of us started wondering how we would venture into the online teaching platforms, I'm sure we had some questions in our mind, like, would I be able to handle it? Would I be able to toggle screens, talk to the students? How do I open my PowerPoint, or should I use one? Should I do this? Am I eligible? Am I capable? Will they like it? Will they listen to me? Several such questions. And I was one of them with a longer list of questions because we were used to one mode and one platform of sharing our teaching space. And then coming to a new space is definitely not easy. So everyone around us, especially all those IT industries that were developing softwares, tools, and techniques, started telling us this is what teachers should do. Several YouTube videos telling us, look, use this, use that, and it'll work wonders. We need to equip ourselves, be pro technology, rehearse sessions, and the multiple advices that we received all overnight, and we were left flabbergasted. So, what I had in mind, one thing that I was very clear was that my session has to be unique. It has to have me in it in spite of whatever that platform is. If I am not Bhavani, then I don't want to be, the same technology that, anyone could do. And I don't want technology to replace me in the learning platform. And that's one thing that was very troubling. And I thought over it several nights before we actually ventured into beginning the semester. So when the alarm set, this is what came to my mind, that it needs a personal touch. And that touch is my me touch. If I don't bring myself into that platform, into the technique that I'm using, I'm going to miss my students. I'm going to, bring a big gap between me and them, and they will drift away. It's not just the emotional aspect. It is also to do with the ability of the learners to connect to the session, to be able to involve themselves, interact, and therefore perform. So here's what I followed. I'm going to give a bunch of things that I did in class that I sort of put together as something that's unique, custom made exclusively for me and my class sessions. So here are some things that I followed. I'm going to first talk about it more in terms of, let's say, actions, and then talk about the tools I used in order to enable these to happen in my classroom. First and foremost, I decided I should form a routine. When we have real life classrooms, we have a routine. So we walk into the class and students greet us. We have an attendance routine or something there is to begin a session, or we ask students something about their day, some conversation. But somehow in the online platform, nobody told us, or nobody even uttered a word about personalizing this space. So everybody said, okay, click on this button, click on that button, do this first, do that first. There's a sharing screen option, there is the toggle option, and several such advices. Everything that was so impersonal about the teaching process. And therefore, I decided that it is essential to form a routine that's unique to you. Whatever suits you, whatever is comfortable for you, that helps your students log in only because they know this is going to happen in this session. And this is going to be a magical world that they are entering into. So create a routine, something that you do in the beginning of every session, something that you would do at the end of every session, or if there is a 1 hour session, after 20 minutes of the session, there's something that you would do. Bring some kind of a ritual into the session. It could be sharing of an anecdote, to reading a poem, to reading a story, to letting your students read a story, to share a painting that they have done over the weekend, anything, but make sure there is a routine, a ritual, so that the students stay connected and they do not feel that their presence in front of the system is not mandatory. The second one, in fact, probably something that's what I believe in, is to dress well for the session. In fact, dress very well for the session, largely because it's going to make you feel good. And if they turn on the system, 80 odd is the usual strength that we have in Indian higher education system, even in schools. And if all of them are going to look at the screen with their videos off and muted, it's just you on the screen, and probably half the screen is your PowerPoint. There's nothing more. How could you, hide away from an opportunity like this? So dress well to fit into that beautiful platform where you can interact with the learners. The next one is to ensure that you break monotony. Like, for example, if students know that this is the pattern in which this teacher is going to teach, then they are likely to slowly walk away from the screen, like how our keynote speaker just mentioned, that they are likely to switch the system on and be away from the screen for a long time. So we need to bring in some techniques to break monotony. Of course, I'm going to discuss some tools, but I'm first discussing some of the tactics to handle students who do not feel a positive impetus to sit in front of the system. The next one is to bring in some surprises, right? Most of the time, for example, we have the synchronous, asynchronous. So most often, I try to use some of these asynchronous as surprises in the class. Some of these submissions, some of them would have done really well. Some of them would have put in extra efforts, or some of them would have by mistake uploaded something that's totally irrelevant. You can pick those out and bring them as surprises to the class. Sometimes I let people sing in the class, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. I say, okay, let's just take a break. Anybody who wants to sing, just sing a song. Give them some surprises, which is suddenly, thrown at them. Not that it comes too often, that they wait for that moment. So let it be a surprise moment. Of course, I'm not going to touch upon this because it's already been dealt with. Breakout rooms really work wonders in large classes. So Most of my classes, I have 65 to 90 students, and I almost always use breakout rooms. So I speak for 10 minutes and I put them in breakout rooms. And I visit each of these rooms with not more than 3-4 students in a team. And one, unmuted. Yeah, thank you. So one advantage of breakout rooms, unlike our classroom discussion, is in the classroom when we ask them to do team discussions, there's going to be so much noise. I'm sorry if we can get the distraction out. Yeah, probably the organizers can do.
I'll drop messages to those who are unmuted. I've been doing that even in Dr. Hutoxi's session, so don't worry. I'm at it. Yeah.
Thanks. Yes.
Okay. And once again, I'm sorry, Dr. Bhavani, we once again request all the participants to please be on mute. The sound is distracting the speaker.
Okay. Yeah, the advantage of using breakout rooms in the online platform is the noise the real classroom has is constantly rolled out here, and students are in their groups exclusively talking to each other. And you have the chance of visiting at random any of these groups. Breakout rooms work very well in MS Teams, in Zoom, in WebEx platforms, in any of these training platforms that you use in your online teaching. The next one is plan proper engagements in creative ways. Now, just because we are online, it does not mean we shouldn't use offline techniques. For example, pen and paper. For example, a bunch of colors or anything to add some excitement to their task. Or in the middle of the session, let them go fetch something that is relevant to the discussion that we are doing in the class. For example, if you're teaching grammar and you want them to do some activity, let it be done in the room wherever they are with all the little things that they have around them. So make sure there is scope for creative activities. Use more visuals and less content. And this is something that I believe in always, even in the offline classroom. In fact, I was somebody who never used PowerPoints in classroom teaching, only for presentations and very formal occasions. I've used PowerPoints very sparingly, and I've been a harsh critique of myself in terms of how a PowerPoint should be done. But when it came to online teaching and you cannot be lecturing one whole hour, the only supporting visual option seemed to be the PowerPoint. And I tried to use it with as many visual effects as possible. And I'm sure some of the previous slides give you the example of that. So I do the parallel talking with the image on the screen and avoid as much content, putting as much content on the screen. Talking into the camera, as I'm doing now, is also very, very essential because sometimes we note that you have a presenter. They might be looking down, probably looking at their screen, or looking at notes or looking elsewhere. And the moment students lose that only eye contact they have, it's going to be very taxing upon them. So it's important for us to ensure that we look straight into the web camera that we have placed on our system. So what tools did I use in order for all of this to materialize in my classroom? I'm sure many of you have used these and are familiar with Google Classroom platforms and with some of the Chrome extension possibilities like Peer Deck, Collaborify, and other options like Padlet, Mentimeter, Edpuzzle, and Canva. I'm going to give little examples from how I used them in my classroom. So let's do a little activity. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and take you to the Mentimeter platform. So all of you could do this for me. I hope you're able to see my screen. Yes? If you're able to see the screen, yeah, you will get a code now. Can you see the code? 5574847. Yes, this is the code on the screen. Please log into menti.com. Go to www.menti.com and use the code 5574847. And put your response to this question. Yes, great. We see responses, Kahoot, Mentimeter, PowerPoint, quizzes. Yes, several quiz platforms. Jamboard, very good. Padlet, yes, great. Nearpod, YouTube. Yes, I think a lot of you use YouTube, Kahoot, and PowerPoint because that seems to be the dominant point. Great. I'm glad that people have used Padlet. Good. Yes. All right, I'm seeing more of Jamboards, Kahoots, Kahoot, YouTube, PowerPoint, Padlets, PDF, hyperlink documents, PowerPoints, Google Meet, Google Classroom, Nearpod, quizzes, and so on. Right. Thank you for interacting on this platform. Let me get back to the session screen. Yes, I hope you're able to see me.
Yeah, we are able to see you, Dr. Bhavani.
All right, thank you.
Now we can't. We could
Okay.
see you for a moment, now we can't.
Okay, for some reason, when I move to another screen, the video switches off by itself. Okay, I will open the PowerPoint and then open the video again. Maybe that helps. Okay, so here we are. Is the PPT visible?
Yes, the PPT is visible, although you're not visible still.
Yeah.
And now you're visible too.
Right. Great, that's great. Okay, so here's what Mentimeter does. I'm sure all of you have, all of you are at least familiar with it, if not having got a chance to use them. You have the option of creating at least a couple of free slides. And this can be done once in a while in order to ensure that your learners get a chance to interact. Like, for example, you can use polling, you can use quizzes, you can use voting, you can ask them to choose which is the right answer, you can give multiple choice questions, and a host of things that you can do to ensure that the learners are engaged and it is two-way communication and it's not one way. For example, if I'm teaching grammar and I'm teaching a certain kind of modifier, let's say dangling modifiers, and I'm creating structures, asking them to choose which is the nearest right option. I could use the Mentimeter to do this because the chat box, of course, will allow me to give them the option of saying A, B, or C. But this is just to give them some, visual appeal and give them that happiness of participating. And when everyone's responses come out on the screen, this is definitely rewarding. The next one, I was glad that some of the participants have mentioned, is the Padlet. I'm going to also show you my Padlet screen. Padlet is a discussion forum, and it allows you to pin little notes, right? So if you're asking them to interact on a certain subject, you put that note on the Padlet platform. You can share the code with the class, and all of them are here. It allows them to add a video, to add images, to add note, to type in whatever they feel like. Of course, you start off by saying decorum to be maintained, and then they can put a beautiful ensemble of things there. And it's so colorful, so engaging. You also can enable the provision of filtering before it's visible to each other. So you as a teacher, as a facilitator, have the option of censoring before it goes public on the Padlet screen for the learners. And you can also say, tell that, these are not allowed. You can let students click on like buttons, give star to each other. And when I did this in my class, a lot of them was so excited at the end of the session. They said this was, a lot more effective than, having oral discussions. When I say, look, unmute and talk, and I'm waiting endlessly to see if somebody would unmute. And then in the chat box, I get 2 lines saying, sorry, my audio was not working. Sorry, I'm using hotspot. And several such excuses, which is very cumbersome for you during a live session to cut down on. So it's important for us to find options to keep the same discussion going, but make it equally effective. So I'm going to stop sharing this and quickly share. I know I'm slightly overshooting time, but just to show you, yes. Are you able to see my Padlet screen now?
We are able to see your screen, but not see the Padlet screen. Earlier, we could see it, Dr. Bhavani.
Okay, are you now?
No, we can see the screen.
We can see the screen, but not the post-it notes where, which you had mentioned earlier. We could see that earlier. Now we can just see the general Padlet screen.
Okay. Let me know if you're able to see it now. Yes.
I think this is the one that you want us to see, where you put remember to eat your veggies.
No.
Ma'am, we can see 3 screens from Padlet.
Okay, I'm sharing one that shows, just a second. I will probably close other things that I'm not using. Right, okay. Now let me know if you can see it. Yes?
No, Dr. Bhavani, we can still see that screen with the, 3 windows open. One My Smart Padlet, one SAP Communication Skills.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just about to open this. I would just want to know if you can see this. Right. Okay. This was for one of the professional communication course that I teach. So here the students were asked to post one image related to emotional intelligence and write 3 sentences explaining the same. And they were all allowed to post any image and talk about it. So here are the pictures, and they have given their comments. Mention a scene from any movie that you have watched and explain one concept of emotional intelligence. And here goes a whole list of things, and students can comment on each other's post as well. You can see that students have extensively written about any movie of their choice, and they have given their comments. You can see peers have given their comments. Yes. And if you give them this session, they get involved in the interaction with each other, and they are able to engage in the discussion. Yes. Yeah. I'll now close the screen and come back to. Okay, are you able to see my PowerPoint now?
No.
Okay, just a second. Yes, I guess you can see the PowerPoint now.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Yes. And my video, is it on?
Yes, your video is on as well.
All right, yes. So that was Padlet. Collaborify, I'm not going to talk about it in detail, but then this is also a Chrome extension. If you go to your mail page, use the apps in Google Apps, you will find Collaborify. Collaborify allows you to have a writing platform. Please use this if you have smaller classes of not more than 50-20 students. It works very well. You have flip books and all of that, so students can all write simultaneously on the same page. You can open several pages with topics, and students can do the writing while in the class. And you can share the screen that they're writing upon, and everyone will be able to view each other's writing document. Another option to make your PowerPoints more colorful and engaging is to use Canva. Canva offers a lot of pre-designed templates over and beyond what you generally have in PowerPoint templates. Canva also is very exciting because it allows you to bring in other substitutions in visuals. For example, it gives a whole gallery of photos and videos that you can insert, and most of them are relevant to the topic that you work on. The next one that I'm going to discuss is Peer Deck. I'm sure some of you have used Peer Deck as well. So Peer Deck is also an extension in Google Chrome, and I'm sorry if you can let me do this. I'll quickly allow the participants to open Peer Deck. So you will do this for me. You will say joinpd.com. Can you see my screen? Yes, I hope you're able to see my screen.
Yes, we can.
All right. So here I'm starting this live session, and I have opened a code for you. So you have to go to joinpd.com. You can see the joinpd.com. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes. So please go to joinpd.com and use this code ASALTW. Joinpd.com, and the code is ASALTW. Great, I can see people have joined in. Please put in what your takeaway from today's session is. And you can see the button down here, show response, and I'm going to click this. Whatever response you type in is going to emerge on the screen, and everyone gets to see this. You can ask your students to put their names. Because I have my own classes joining, by default, their names appear. But because we are doing on an open platform here, the names would not. Okay, there are around 13 responses. I'm just letting you see them. Scrolling through for want of time because I do not want to put the organizers in trouble. Okay, that's great. Around 14. Okay. Thank you so much for responding. For want of time, I will have to say sorry and end this session. While I think most of you have said it was, creative and communication, engaging students. These are some takeaways, right? So. I would like to end my presentation with a simple reading of a poem that I wrote during the pandemic, and I'm sure most of you share the same anxiety as I do with the given online platform and with the limitations of the platform. So here goes. In the name of hope. When the yellow and purple flowers carpeted the lawns and the roads, the tree still smiled to shed a few more the next morning. When the heavy iron gates closed that evening, they wistfully knew it would open wide in a few days. When people gave a parting hug and waved goodbye, they knew it was just a month's break. When the carved wooden doors shut behind those silent corridors, they yearned for the uproar to resurge again. When all the desktops were shut down and closed, they prepared themselves to hibernate for 30 days. When the tables scattered with books and the shelves stuffed with files were left uncovered, they believed we will unfasten them in a few weeks' time. When unfinished reports and tasks were shelved, we told ourselves we'll be at it and meet back for it in 4 weeks. We believed, we presumed, we hoped, we guessed. We believe, we presume, we hope, and we guess that we will start soon and we will start afresh. Thank you. If we have time, I could allow some questions.
Yes, Dr. Bhavani, we have about 10 minutes for questions. So anybody who has questions can either put them in the chat box, or as I said earlier, you could unmute yourself and ask the questions. Dr. Bhavani, as you can see, there are a lot of compliments for your poem, as well as for your presentation, and for the fact that you have shared tools. In fact, that was one of the questions which had appeared in the registration form that we had circulated. Could someone share a few strategies? And you have done that, so thank you very much for it.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I must thank Dr. Mala Pandurang for contacting me and giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Bhavani. It was an invaluable.
Any questions, anybody?
Ma'am, there is a question on the chat in the chat box.
Yes, I will take a look at it here.
Okay. Vanetta Rodriguez is asking, is Collaborify compatible on mobile phones?
Not really. You will need a desktop or a laptop for the simple fact that it'll have too many students, writing in at the same time. So using on the mobile will not be possible. Even for students to do that would be difficult.
Ma'am, I'd like to ask a question to Dr. Bhavani.
Yes, definitely, Huda.
Ma'am, firstly, I'd like to appreciate you for the kind of innovation that you've brought to your class. The fact that, we were all struggling to kind of add that personal touch that we generally have in our classrooms when we meet them physically. And I do realize, I have realized the importance of having a personalized space. It doesn't really matter if it's virtual, right? So so this year, ma'am, when I began with the academic year, we had a new set of students come in. Right? Generally, when we met them, we would spend some time getting to know them, interact with them, right?
Yes.
So that once we begin with the syllabus, we've had some insight into where they come from, what their perspectives are. So, ma'am, how do you think, if we have to do virtual learning again, say this becomes a normal for us now, then how do you think a teacher should deal with getting to know her students, taking into consideration, aspects as personalizing space, or I really like the aspect on breaking the monotony.
Yes.
Because each day you would log into a class and you'd have the same screen, and students were reluctant to switch their videos on.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Huda, for raising that. In fact, what I did to break that, for me, it was rather gothic because, it's so terrifying to start a class without knowing anyone out there, especially if you're teaching, the fresh, students. For the example, when the first year started, not much apprehensive, and I taught the second and the senior semester students because we had some familiarity in some way or the other. But when the fresh, students came in, it became really very difficult to relate to them because they come from all corners of the country and even outside. You have no clue who they are and what they are. For the matter, you don't even know if they're going to be seated in front of the system listening to you. So to know them, a little task that I did was before we began the session, I'd asked them to post a picture of them and write a few things colorfully, hand do it or do it digitally, whatever, and post it in the Google Classroom. I gave this as an asynchronous activity, before we began the session during the semester. And of course, the class strength was 85. It was not easy for me to go through all of them and to know them overnight, but I did make it a point to see them and the next morning at least call out 10 students and interact with them, telling, look, I read your profile, found this very interesting. So we have an artist in our class, we have a social worker in our class, we have a singer in our class, we have a guitarist in our class, and I made them share this amongst themselves as well, so that they knew each other, because that's also very traumatizing, because they began on the virtual platform unlike the senior students. So I made it a point that they knew each other, and every now and then in the class, we take up that subject, that little discussion once in a while, bring out that profile in between the session, and continue the session. So make sure that the personal connect is maintained.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
There is another question, Dr. Bhavani, in the chat box. Shubhida is asking, can Collaborify be used while teaching on any of the virtual platforms, for example, MS Teams or Google Meet?
Yeah. So this is just like how you toggle screens in all platforms. So you have to just keep Collaborify opened on another tab. So when you share screen, you share Collaborify. The code is shared with the class, or you allow collaborate with the class. So you add in your students as participants on the Collaborify platform. And as I said, please do it only if you have a class strength of less than 20, because if multiple people start writing on the same page, it becomes cumbersome for you to work around. But you have fewer people, you will be able to deal with it. But yes, definitely you can use on any platform. It's just like keeping another tab open and sharing your screen. Yes, most of the students log in via mobile phones. So what tools would work best on mobiles? Mentimeter works very well, and Peer Deck works very well. So I use both of this extensively.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sure a lot of us have now been exposed to newer ways in which we can make our class engaging. I have definitely.
Huda, there are a couple of questions more. Dr. Hutoxi is asking that do you use these platforms synchronously or asynchronously, and do you inform the class before you start that you are going to use this platform in your class?
Okay, I use them mostly synchronously because asynchronous, they can always do things at their own pace in their own time. Of course, Peer Deck allows you to use both options: teacher paced, that is during the synchronous, and learner paced, which is asynchronous. You can do the same with the Google Slide option. Peer Deck is just an add-on. Why do I use it during the class? Because I want everyone to come alive in my class, and I just can't imagine a class that's quiet. It's personally very petrifying for me. So that's when I decided that I would use them in the synchronous sessions. Do I inform them in advance? Where and when required, I do. For example, the Padlet, you can see that questions are pre-framed and columns are made. In such cases, yes. Sometimes I do not want them to know what the discussion is, and if it has to happen during the discussion, and I don't want them to pre-plan or pre-think on what their response would be, then I do not reveal it. I let it happen during the session. But since Peer Deck and Mentimeter work very well even on mobile phones, I've not had many students complaining about it.
Ma'am, another question that is raised is by Mala ma'am. It is most of our students log in via mobiles. What tools would work best on mobiles? So anybody could answer.
Yeah, that's the question I just answered.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
said that Mentimeter works best.
Okay.
Yeah, Peer Deck also.
This is a really interesting and important session. So we could take a couple of questions more if people have any. Yeah, there is a question by Trishla who says, how has the submission of your projects been? Do you promote the use of interactive tools?
Okay. Most of the project submissions have happened on Google Classroom because it allows easy grouping and grading. So I used Google Classroom. And discussions related to them were again opened in the Google Classroom platform. So where it was required for students to discuss on a certain topic, I allowed them to discuss in the Google Classroom. In fact, as Dr. Randeria mentioned, what is it that I take in the asynchronous platform? I use these discussions. For example, when I was teaching American literature, a lot of aspects, especially history related, that you cannot discuss in the class. You can't be discussing the whole of history, but you definitely place a text in the context. You bring history, but you want your learners to know much more. Then I posted history channel videos in the Google Classroom, asked them to watch it in advance and come with, a bunch of points that can be taken up for discussion in class. And when I give them such activities, I ask them to do it in a particular manner. For example, I ask them to use concept maps or mind maps, colorfully represent the points, and I make it a point that they, open their videos and, share what they have done, in paper, or share their screen if they have done digitally. Because if they just have to note down some bullet points, they will scribble in notepads and throw it away. I wanted them to diligently participate in every task that was given. So some thought into what you want your learners to do.
We will take one last question, Dr. Bhavani, from Dr. Lakshmi. She first thanks you for your session and has complimented you for making it very useful. But she has also asked you whether you have come across any such innovative tools for testing as well. And if so, could you share testing tools?
Yes, I wish we had time to discuss testing because that's a different, topic altogether. However, I would suggest, ma'am, all your quiz platforms allow you innovative ways in which you can test during classes as well as end of a certain topic or so on. Now, please do not assume that a quiz platform is only quiz in the sense of MCQs. A lot of these quiz platforms have very, very creative testing options. So I would suggest that you, try and search these tools and discover it for yourself. If you go to YouTube, you will find a lot of demonstration videos as well.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Dr. Bhavani, I just have a request. Your biodata mentions that you have authored 4 textbooks and published also. I was wondering if you would be kind enough to share us a list of publications with us, which we could then circulate among the participants.
Definitely, ma'am. Yes, these were English textbooks published with Cambridge University Press, co-authored with other team members from the department. Yes, I would definitely be happy to share them with you.
And once again,
thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Dr. Bhavani, not only for making the session very engaging and getting us to do a lot of activities, but also giving a lot of practical tips and telling us both your own experiences and giving people tools both for testing and teaching. So from here, we could move on to the final session for the day, which would be paper presentations. Before I hand it over to Huda to introduce the moderator, Dr. Seema Sharma, who would be moderating the paper presentations, I would again like to request people to keep themselves on mute because the speakers are getting disturbed. I would also like to tell all paper presenters that they should kindly stick to the time limit. At the end of 9 minutes, Melina would ring an alarm that would simply imply that you would have 1 minute to conclude your paper, and at 10 minutes you will be requested by your moderator to stop. The moderator will have the freedom to choose whether all the papers will be clubbed together or questions will be taken, and then the questions will be taken at the end for all, or whether after each paper she would like to take questions. So having said that, let me again hand it over to Huda for her to introduce our moderator for the paper presentations, Dr. Seema Sharma.
Thank you, ma'am. Our moderator for today, Dr. Seema Sharma, who is Associate Professor of English Literature at Hind College, Mumbai, and has taught undergraduate and graduate classes for over 25 years in several universities in India. She has translated and published critical and creative work from Hindi to English, which is one of her areas of interest. Seema Sharma has a Fulbright postdoctoral scholar at Stanford University from 2015 to 2016. Ma'am, we are absolutely elated to have you amongst us as the moderator for this segment. Ma'am, requesting you to unmute.
I've unmuted myself. Thank you, Huda, for the introduction. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm especially thankful to Dr. Mala Pandurang and Dr. Preeti Shirodkar, who have had me here, because it's been such a learning experience for me. I mean, to share something with you of which I am not so shy about as I would have been earlier. I was petrified when it came to online learning. I was not very tech savvy. And so the initial days were more about, getting to know the different apps, making them work without glitches. And now, having been comfortable with this, I'm so very excited after Dr. Bhavani's plenary session that I'm looking forward for the classes to resume after the exams, and I want to use Padlet in my class. So I think that kind of transition, and it's becoming almost a kind of ecstatic for us to discover new extensions and new tools which we can use to make our classes more interactive. And I think this is what is also the focus of this conference, which have started on a flying note: communication at the crossroads, adapting to the new normal. And I think the keynote set the tone for what is going to be today's the theme, which runs through the 4 paper readers session today, which is the lack of engagement from the end of the learners and the educators, and how is it that online learning can overcome these challenges. Since all 4 papers deal with the challenges, I propose that we have them together. So requesting all the paper readers to stick to the time limit of 10 minutes, and then we can take the question and answer sessions at the end. So our first speaker is Dr. Lakshmi Muthukumar. She's Associate Professor and Head of the Department English, SIES College. And she's going to speak on ensuring online effectiveness in verbal and non-verbal communications. So I hand it over to Dr. Lakshmi Muthukumar for her paper now.
I hope I'm audible to
yes,
everybody.
Lakshmi. Yes, Dr. Lakshmi.
Yeah. I'm just trying to share my screen so I can have my PPT. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, I am. Yes, we are. Sorry.
Yes, thanks. So yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. When I first received the concept note for this conference, my curiosity was indeed piqued. Here was an opportunity to exchange notes with other teachers. I was hoping that the forum would allow for an interaction with other teachers, and one could listen, learn, and grow. And indeed, the keynote and the first plenary session have done just that. I begin with a rider that all I'm doing here is sharing my experiences honestly and making some observations based on the feedback I received after a survey I conducted with my students. When the pandemic began, the prospect of having to unlearn conventional teaching methods and embracing new technologies to train students in language and literature loomed large. The challenge seemed humongous to someone who has never been great with technology. As someone who had relied on chalk and talk for more than 25 years, I was petrified to say the least, and joined every possible bandwagon to acquire the necessary tools and skills one would need to become competent in this respect. I was, however, sorely disappointed. Every faculty development program I had joined was simply showing me how to do things and listing do's and don'ts. There was no attempt at providing hands-on training. At the end of them all, I was just as anxious as I was when I had started. It was in the month of July that our internal quality assurance cell put together a hands-on workshop that was a week long. From morning to evening, we were given hands-on training with our own staff members as resource persons. It was an excellent opportunity at hands-on training with rigorous assignments, and we picked up several skills that we never dreamt that we would get used to so seamlessly. It gave me the confidence to approach online teaching without apprehension. Before, however, I could realize what was happening, the clear lines that had divided my work life from my home had blurred. And I found myself on a roller coaster I could not control the pace of or stop. A major disadvantage of working from home was that one was on work mode constantly. While teacher and learner apathy are issues that one has to address, another art one has to learn, whatever end of the spectrum one belongs to, I realized, was the art of moderation. You can see on my PowerPoint some signs of teacher burnout. I'm sure all of us have gone through some of these at least during the pandemic. Stress, neck, shoulder and back pain, stiffness of the wrists, and dryness of the eyes with the increased screen time were symptoms that every teacher and student had to contend with. These are trying times, but blended learning is here to stay. The online methodology has shown us a way to beat the infrastructural challenges posed by the pandemic. Given social distancing norms, even after the COVID-19 scare ends, we would most probably be using blended teaching learning platforms, and therefore being apathetic to the change will be detrimental for both the teacher and the taught. My topic for today is therefore trainer and learner apathy and how it impacts the effectiveness of online teaching. Our stakeholders and our own selves go through a lot of disadvantages like sleep deprivation and anxiety, very often at the core of ineffectiveness in online teaching. Very often, therefore, there is a need to fight teacher apathy and certainly learner apathy. Our stakeholders, the students, I have found, enjoy the privileges that come with studentdom, but fail to fulfill the duties and responsibilities that come with it. All they have to do is focus, concentrate, and put in some efforts to consciously discipline themselves, or so we think. Even with the class materials available to them at the click of a mouse and the luxury of not leaving the comfort of their homes, students sometimes do not appreciate the hard work put in by the teachers and are lax with their academics. It is not as if all the students are lazy. There are some who are proactive and disciplined. Those students excel, but some fall by the wayside, and it is here that the teacher's apathy compounds the problem. Monitoring student participation during an online lecture takes a lot of effort, and it is often easy for a complacent teacher to focus on portion completion, log into a lecture and drone on without caring whether the students are logged in and are actually listening to the teacher or are only virtually present. Online teaching can be truly effective only if a balance is struck. I conducted a survey in order to find out if my strategies in class were working. Teacher apathy, therefore, is a concern that has to be addressed. Why should it be addressed urgently? How can it be addressed effectively? I find that the internal quality assurance cell can play a very crucial role in our institutions. What will actually help is opportunities at generating platforms and forums for feedback. And this was exactly what I tried to do when I conducted a survey online using a Google form. There were a total of 115 responses in the limited time that I had before this presentation. And these students belong to the first, second, and third year undergraduate literature courses. Many of them lauded our efforts generously and appreciated the fact that they were able to learn without having to travel. Some of these questions were objective in nature and some were subjective. They therefore mentioned particularly that they liked the fact that all the class materials were available in one place for everyone to access at their own pace and leisure. 96.5% of them responded in the affirmative when asked whether the presentations used by the teachers in class and shared with them were useful. On the other hand, there were some who felt that the fun of socializing with friends, the campus experience itself, had been denied to them, and online learning took the thrill of a college education out entirely. When asked which atmosphere was better suited for education, 75.7% of the students voted for a physical classroom experience, and only 24.3% preferred online learning. This was a sentiment vociferously expressed by the first year undergraduate students, especially it was their precious debut year, and the pandemic had ruined the college experience for them entirely. The second and third year students had experienced both online and offline learning. Statistics revealed that online learning helped them learn better at their own pace. 63.5% felt it did help them, and 36.5% felt that network issues, the lack of physical interaction, and the personal touch was unhelpful. They did, however, appreciate the introduction that the English literature course gave them various aspects of fiction that was unprecedented and highlighted the fact that they felt empowered to approach any kind of fiction confidently, as the course did not just prepare them from an examination point of view, but enable them to take an informed perspective on different aspects of fiction. When asked whether the online learning experience enabled them to understand fiction better, 91.3% of the students replied in the affirmative. There were separate questions posed specific to literature, and one of these was whether online training helped them in the close reading of literary texts. 79.1% said yes. And in response to specific questions on whether online training helped them to understand how to critically appreciate literary texts and think rationally, 83.5% agreed that it did out of the 115 responses. 62.5% of the respondents felt that it was easier to do projects and assignments online as coordination was made easier. Technology helped save time and energy and also eliminated stage fear. 37.5% felt that network issues and lack of technology handicapped them, and they preferred interacting physically as a better method of working on group projects and assignments. Physically browsing around in a college library was sorely missed by some students. Some of the subjective responses were heart-rending and spoke volumes about the toll the pandemic had taken on their mental health. The whole experience was an eye-opener and revealed that online effectiveness may be a convenience for most, but at the end of the day, it was unfair to those who came from socio-economically underprivileged demographics. Not everyone has the luxury of space, and requesting teachers and students living in cramped houses to turn on their videos was an invasion of their right to privacy. Many are reluctant to keep their video cameras turned on and are traumatized by the very prospect of being judged for the noise levels in the background or their physical surroundings. Having said that, there are many ways in which learner apathy can be overcome, and I think the slide speaks for itself. Having said all this, teaching literature online has opened up new possibilities for the teacher. It is now possible to start a topic by sharing the link to a YouTube video a few days prior to a lecture and then approach the subject. The experience serves as an effective icebreaker and generates a lot of discussion. It was now possible to screen a clip of an episode from the adaptation of the novel one was teaching on film as soon as that episode or chapter has been discussed. Online learning management systems help us keep a tab on whether the pop quiz at the end of every module or topic has been attempted by all the students or not. At a glance, it was possible to tell from the scores auto-generated what percentage of the class had understood the concept and what percentage hadn't. It also enabled us to identify exactly which students are completely at sea and for what reason. While monitoring features helped us to identify the weaker students, it is necessary to keep motivating them to ask questions, facilitate interactions that are personalized so that they open up, reassuring parents of differently abled students and slow learners so that they can approach teachers online and interact with them face to face virtually was also a heartwarming experience. But all this cuts into one's time and takes a lot of energy. Follow up is a continuous process, and unless initiated, defeats the purpose of all the work undertaken online. If complacency sets in, it can be lethal to the teaching learning process. These are some of the ways in which a rapport can be built up with our students online. The pandemic and its related challenges have, if anything, brought to the fore the weaknesses and strengths of every educational institution out into the open. The classroom and what goes on inside it behind closed doors, unknown to the parent, has now become an open secret. Every teacher's ability to communicate effectively, both verbally and non verbally, is evident to all the stakeholders concerned. If lectures are recorded and posted on public forums, they become double edged swords. In the end, it will be the victory of quality over infrastructure and of effectiveness over effectiveness. It is necessary to review the scenario staring at pedagogy of the future as a glass that is half full instead of half empty, because that is the only way blended learning will work. Thank you. I hope I have kept time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lakshmi. Yes, you have kept time, and that would leave us adequate time at the end to have question and answer session. So, Doctor, thank you for a very, very interesting, informative paper based on your experience, and I think as teachers, most of us could identify with it, that how from being a situation which wasn't chosen by us, but had been actually thrust upon us, it has been very encouraging to know that students actually, the response has been that they feel empowered, that they're going beyond what they could cover in a syllabus, or just not studying from the point of view of the examination. So that's a very encouraging response from the students. Thank you so much. We move on.
Thank you for the opportunity.
We move on to the next presenters, and this is a paper which is being jointly presented by Dr. Vinita Rodrigues and Miss Annabel Ribeiro, both assistant professors at Maniben Nanavati Women's College. And the presentation is titled Demystifying Online Etiquettes. So requesting both the speakers to take on from here.
Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction. Just a little correction. I don't hold a PhD degree, but that's totally fine. I'll just share my screen. Just give me a minute. I hope it's visible to everyone. And I'm audible.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you're audible as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay. My name is Miss Vinita Rodrigues, and I have my co-researcher with me, Miss Annabel Rodrigues, Miss Annabel Ribeiro. We are from Maniben Nanavati Women's College from the English department. Both of us are assistant professors, and we selected the topic for our paper titled Demystifying Online Etiquettes, a Study. The reason we selected this particular topic is because as teachers ourselves, we faced a lot of problems when it came to online teaching, and there was a shift from face-to-face teaching to online teaching, overnight, and we came across a lot of challenges. Not only us, we also had students who came across a lot of these challenges. So Yeah. So talking about online etiquette, what exactly is online etiquette? It's basically good behavior and manners that are expected of us when we are in class, specifically when we are in virtual setup. And it is very important to be mindful when it comes to engaging with others in an online platform. There is also a need to avoid sarcasm as a teacher and also as a student. We are also supposed to be kind and respectful to our peers, also to teachers and students, and also be patient simultaneously while doing all of this teaching in an online setup. Um, these are some of the problems which we encountered when we were teaching. So it's already represented in two memes, which you can see on my screen right now. So one is from the student's perspective, and the other one is from the teacher's perspective, because the teachers are loaded with n number of lectures to be taken in a day. The methodology what we used for our research was online questionnaire via Google Forms. We had around 90 students who responded to our survey. So we gave a student perspective, and we also looked at a teacher's perspective when it comes to online etiquettes. And the questions that were designed in such a way that it tackled the availability of technology, also access, also catering to mental health and mental state of mind of the teachers and the students. I also forgot to mention the teachers, we had 40 responses all around the globe, not only in India. So we had 40 responses, and the target group for both the research was school teachers and up to postgraduate level teachers. The first survey that we conducted was a student-centric survey, and the analysis are as follows. The first one was lack of motivation. The second one was, it was not a very peaceful environment at home, because there were a lot of students who also had siblings who were also simultaneously attending classes. The student-teacher interaction was not up to the mark, because a lot of students, they felt so. Students also felt they were overburdened with more workload and assignments. Even though it's an online setup and teachers expect a lot from students since they're always on their phones, they felt it a little more overburdened with workload. Also, rigorous class hours without breaks in between lectures was one of the challenges which students faced. Also, pressure to perform better. We always say this, that aap to ghar pe ho, to ghar pe aap kuch bhi kar sakte ho, because you are cutting off traveling time. So there is always a pressure to perform better. And also, they were unable to manage time. This is a very, one of the most well-known challenges which students have faced. Moving on to the next survey, that is the faculty-centric survey. We kind of also touched upon what the faculty, felt when it came to online etiquettes and online teaching. So the first point goes like this. There was inadequate technical support from the institution and university. This is supposed to be, it is a very controversial topic, though. It's a very controversial point, but not many teachers felt the institution was giving them adequate technical support. Also, not a very peaceful environment, because you also have teachers who have kids, and they were also simultaneously attending their lectures online. Also, unable to satisfy students' needs on an online platform. This is what the teachers felt as well. Major connection issues. I have faced this a lot. I have I always get logged out of my own lectures because I don't have proper internet connection. So this is one of the challenges which teachers face. Also, increased workload. When we're talking about the teacher-centric survey, teachers are not only teaching in the class, they are also working behind the scenes. They are part of different committees, they're part of different organizations, and also they are also presenting research papers. So they're doing a lot of personal work also. So it was the question of the challenge of increased workload. Due to this, there was a lot of stress which the teachers encountered, and stress due to unhealthy working hours. Because since we are at home, it is cut off again for teachers as well. We are expected to work even at 10 o'clock, sometimes even 1 o'clock in the morning. And this is what the teachers had to say. Also, the same thing goes for the faculty. That is, there's a pressure to perform better. So, as most of the speakers who mentioned today at the plenary session, at the keynote address, they also mentioned that, we need to devise certain techniques so that, to make our teaching even more innovative. So, yeah. Going throughout the survey, just through the entire analysis, we came up with some recommendations which we feel that us as teachers and also as students we can follow. These are following recommendations. So access to supplementary resources can be provided in conducting classes online for teachers and students respectively. Technical support could be provided to teachers to better handle online teaching with an assistance of an ICT expert. I know most of the colleges have already received it, but as far as the survey goes, as the analysis and the responses, we found that there are some colleges wherein this assistance is not really provided. Institutes should continue employing a combination of teaching mode of online and offline learning post-pandemic. This is what we feel. And also right now, if it is possible, we can do that. Also taking, keeping in mind certain precautions that need to be taken. Also, short breaks should be included in between lectures because we have students and teachers sitting for a period of, for a duration of 4 to 5 hours. And it is really, really hectic for both the parties. So I think short breaks could be included. Teachers and students should be asked to meet at least once a week to discuss subject-related doubts in person or maybe online. Maybe we can have, maybe one session during the weekend, at least for an hour or maybe 30 minutes. I think that would be great. The conclusion. So the switch from face-to-face teaching to the virtual classroom has kind of proven to be very challenging and a very difficult task for both the teachers and students respectively, though we are still, they're still trying to manage it. The issue of time management, which I've already mentioned that I came across in both the surveys, we could do this by combating some time management techniques. I've come across this Pomodoro method, wherein you time your task for 20 to 25 minutes and then give 5 minutes breaks in between. That is how you'll be able to achieve your goal throughout the day. There also needs to be a mutual understanding between both the parties in the sense, if the teacher is asking you to do something, the student should also be willing to do it. And the only reason this can be done is when the teacher kind of employs a lot of innovative techniques, a lot of innovative apps. Technology has been a major link in ensuring online learning. And many times there is also the case of failure of technology, and we also can see how teachers and students are dependent on it. So that's the reason we could also have a combination of offline teaching as well. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'm ready to take questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Vinita. We will take the questions at the end after all the 4 papers have been presented. So thank you very much. Very informative paper. And yes, what I liked is that you have raised the problems from both end of the viewpoint of the students as well as the faculty. Yes, we have been talking about burnout for the teachers, but at the same time, students are very genuine in their complaint about continuous screen time, no breaks, and so on and so forth. So I hope that we are able to make the second semester where we a more student friendly teaching experience. Thank you so much. We move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Dr. Rashmi Lee George. She's Assistant Professor, Department of English at St. Xavier's College. And she would be talking about examining etiquettes in the conflicting space of an online classroom. And I can completely understand how conflicting that space can be, because we need to make that space not impersonal, but at the same time, we need to be respectful of certain boundaries. So really looking forward to your paper, Rashmi.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sharma. May I share screen at this point? Am I audible? That's the largest question.
Yes.
Yes, you are. Yes.
I'd like to share screen. I want to. Yeah.
You have been given the rights.
Yeah. Thank you. Can you see the screen, all of you?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay, I have, there's a slight change in the title. It is called The Conflictual Online Classroom. Okay, let me. Yeah, The Conflictual Online Classroom and a Tale of Two Collaborative Digitals. That's what I titled it. And I hope you find this interesting. As Dr. Sharma mentioned, we have been thrust into this space of online teaching. So it is one of the primary things that all of us understand is that It was not by choice. Online education has always existed. We've had flipped classrooms, blended learning, etc. But this is probably the first time. And also we've encouraged to create online content and float it on the World Wide Web. But this is probably the first time all of us are on camera and are talking to our students via this screen. And I'm basing this presentation on my experience working at St. Xavier's College. We started in July, from July to December. It was a very interesting phase to go through this experience of the online space. And what I realized also was in terms of the etiquette, Xavier's had put the netiquettes in place on our website. And of course, there were consequences mentioned to violation of those netiquettes, which included all kinds of misdemeanor. And I found that the students were extremely, I mean, they were well behaved in the classroom. At least we didn't have that, at least I didn't have that problem. Of course, the reality could be, just as all of us have mentioned, it is a dark screen. We are only seeing names, etc. So the virtual online space relatively was harmless in that sense. Otherwise, in a regular classroom, you have to ensure discipline, ask them to be quiet, people can start talking, all of that would happen. But in the online space, actually, that did not happen for me. At the most, what happened was sometimes students would exit before, meaning suppose the lecture is supposed to end at 10 o'clock, they would exit at 9:59, or if I went to 10:01 or 10:02, they would just exit. So I had to request them to stop that. What I would do is typically take the Zoom report, just put it on Google Classroom and not say anything. So they get the message that this is the time that they exited and it is recorded. So that was the only problem that I faced. But what I also discovered as I started preparing also for this presentation was something else. Now, this is again a point that was discussed in St. Xavier's. We were told about this whole idea of the digital native and the digital immigrant. And I was very interested in that idea, which led me also to write this paper. Now, the notion of the digital native, as was propounded by Mark Prensky in the year 2000.
Dr. Rashmi, I'm sorry, but can you put your screen on full, can you put your slide on full screen?
Okay, slide on full, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Okay, so Mark Prensky was the one who started talking about this whole idea of the digital native and digital immigrant. Now, my title of What's in a Name is taken obviously from Shakespeare's works, but there is a lot in a name, frankly, in this case particularly. The idea of the native and the immigrant within this online space or within the virtual space was not a new phenomenon. It was already mentioned by John Perry Barlow in a message called A Declaration of the Independence of Cyberspace. Excuse me. Cyberspace in the year 1996. Now, he mentioned those terms in the context of internet freedom and the sovereignty of the cyberspace. What Prensky does is he takes these two metaphors, he uses it in the context of the digital native and the digital immigrant, and he talks about how important it is to have skills like gaming, for instance, while teaching students. And he started creating this he created an argument. Of course, it has been debated a lot, it has been criticized a lot, and I'll come to that in just a few seconds. The terms that were used for students who were born before after 1980 was the word digital native, and those born before 1980 were the digital immigrants. Now, the digital natives, according to Prensky, are students who are born literally with a digital spoon, who are very comfortable with technology, etc. And the digital immigrants have had to learn. But the problematic statement that he makes is the digital immigrant will never lose his or her accent. Now, in that context, it's a accent is they would still call up and say, oh, I've sent you an email, please check. I will take a printout and I will read, those kind of things. So the clash of the digital titans is about this complicated terminology that Prensky uses to define a generation. his idea of changing the syllabus, etc., is well taken. But the complication is this assumption that people born before 1980 or the so-called digital immigrants can never acquire a digital native status. And I, in my experience, have found senior teachers who are extremely well equipped with technology and who have learned it. They have learned it. And therefore, Prensky was criticized for this exoticization of the youngsters, and also, creating this new binary between the immigrants, digital immigrants, and the digital natives. Further, he goes on to talk about digital wisdom. Now, these were a series of papers, I'm so sorry, that he wrote between 2001 to 2011 or 13. While he does that, he talks also about digital wisdom, which is about not using technology just for the sake of it, but being very judicious in the use of technology, etc. And he feels that without technology, you cannot have any kind of digital wisdom. So these were problematic points, which were, of course, challenged. People conducted surveys, and they found that these metaphors and these ideas were not exactly, this could not be held true. Now, while we were into online education, I'm sure all of us went through a season of panic. We were all a little concerned about how are we going to take it forward. And this is what the critics who criticized Prensky's argument, which was, of course, his arguments were not exactly well-founded and always well-researched, but it just took on like a storm, and everyone was talking about it. So the critics of Prensky mentioned that there is a certain kind of academic moral panic. They use the word moral panic to talk about this panic that was generated. And I think all of us really also went through this panic. Now, Prensky also assumes that everybody has access and everybody uses technology in the same way, which is not the case at all. And since we have talked about the Indian digital context already, I will not spend time on it. So these were problematic areas which were tackled. And I think all of us probably also went through it. We were constantly being told, and also somewhere this awareness that maybe we will not be able to handle. And I'm sure by now, all of us are handling it in some way or the other and making it meaningful as well. So that's one of the arguments that I wanted to put forward in my paper. The last bit that I found, and this was a very, relieving factor, the fact that we managed the semester very well, and it was really a collaborative exercise between the students and the teachers. So for example, I'd like to give you two examples from, and before I go there, I also want to make something that I've dealt with in the paper, is this distinction that critics have made with regard to pedagogy, and they have used the word anagogy also. Just give me a minute. Yeah. They've talked about pedagogy, andragogy, and hutogogy. So I had to get used to these terms as well. And I was also evaluating all of this through the experiences that I've had as a teacher. And of course, I was not doing it consciously. I was trying to make sense of what we were doing, and also trying to create a meaningful classroom. So pedagogy apparently is used as a lens for young learners. Andragogy is used for adult learners, and hutogogy is a lens that is a lens of creative and self-directed effort. So it's a combination of all of this, the collaboration that we're talking about. The collaboration is where the student is also given the freedom to use his or her talent, to use technology to his or her advantage. In case of the media studies class that I taught last semester, I had asked the students to, for example, I would give them photographs of leading investigative journalists in the world and ask them to find information which they would put forth very creatively. But what I also found very interesting was the idea that they had taken on from, let me again share screen. Yeah, I'd given another task. I'd given them an imaginative task of asking them how they would prepare for an investigative piece of journalism, and you have to tweet that, that headline.
I'm sorry to butt in, Rashmi, but you need to wind up the paper.
Okay, last point, that's it. Yes. I just need to show this one, and the rest of the points are all in the paper. So if you can just read this part, And that's all that I have to say. So my point is that with a collaborative exercise, I think our online teaching, despite all the impediments, was still a successful exercise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and my apologies for curtailing it. But then we asked, we want the audience to have enough time, question and answer time at the end. So thank you so much for this interesting paper and making us, at least me, aware that the migration words exist outside of literary studies. And so a lot of us in the teaching faculty or attending today are digital natives or digital immigrants, but thankfully the border crossing has been smooth. Now we move on to the last presenter of today's session, and this Dr. Ms. Minoti Naik, Assistant Professor, Communication and Soft Skills, Kohinoor Business School, and she would be talking about navigating through the real crisis, the virtual way, communicating effectively during the lockdown. So over to you, Minoti.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, Minoti, you can. Yes, you are.
Yeah. So the title of my presentation is Navigating Through the Real Crisis the Virtual Way, Communicating Effectively During the Lockdown. To set the context of my presentation, just a moment. Yeah, setting the context of my presentation, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected varied sectors across the world in innumerable ways, education being just one of them. When schools and colleges were asked to pack their bags and they went home after the lockdown was announced, little did we anticipate that the classroom or school would henceforth now be a more virtual space than real. Uh, Language and communication primarily evolve with people, apart from being a vehicle for them to convey and express what they feel. However, with restrictions on movement and meeting individuals, there was very little space or no scope for interaction and language development through the face-to-face idea exchange and conversations. Uh, Pushed by this necessity to innovate and attempting to both teach and reach their students, language and communication teachers came up with some innovative ways of teaching their students to navigate through the real crisis the virtual way. Uh, what is the scope and the limitations of my paper and my study and the methodology that I have used? I would like to outline it. I will be talking about techniques that educators have used to make their teaching of communication and to a certain extent language impactful. The observations I have drawn in my paper are related mostly to undergraduate and postgraduate level teaching. Although I think there are some very interesting interventions that have happened at the school level, but for paucity of time, I would not be touching on those. My insights have also been derived from experiential teaching, experiences of my colleagues and students, and secondary data. So coming to my presentation, the first part is what were the techniques that were used in the virtual classroom? And here I would like to give certain examples. The first example that I would like to touch on is the technique that we used at Kohinoor Business School. My senior, my mentor, the person with whom I work, Dr. Preeti Shirodkar, she used this technique in her managerial communication classes at Kohinoor Business School. At the end of the class, she would ask a student to note down whatever was taken in the session and summarize that particular session in the next session. Now, the selection of students was done at random. Initially, students were uncomfortable, but later when they became comfortable, I think they realized the importance of of taking down notes. This improved their listening, this improved their reading, and when they presented summaries in the next class, that also progressively improved their speaking skills. So this is one technique that Dr. Preeti Shirodkar used, which was extremely effective in our classes. The next thing that I would like to share is teaching and testing grammar. Now, there are two examples which I have to share. One is something which Ms. Huda Sayed from Dr. BMN College used in her classes. Uh, when she realized that students are facing some issues in typical areas in grammar, she devised quizzes on those particular areas. She also devised worksheets and gave them to their students. Later, she also tested whether students had made significant progress in those particular areas in grammar. Another example that I would like to give is of an educationist and an edtech blogger called Raquel Rebelo from Brazil. She used current affairs around the coronavirus outbreak as an opportunity for her students to both get informed and study grammar. It was a very effective way for her to enable her students to sympathize and share their concerns and experiences with each other. The benefits of this exercise far exceeded the grammatical concerns that Ribeiro had set out to address. So these are the two ways in which teaching and testing grammar was addressed. The third was, again, speaking through experience. Uh, when we conducted online group discussions and personal interviews at Kohinoor Business School, Dr. Preeti Shirodkar and I work as the communication team there. And as a part of our employability readiness program, we had to actually teach students where to look on screen, how to dress. I think I identified with Dr. Bhavani when she spoke about the fact that we have to be dressed better. We also spoke about how one holds the mic, where one holds the mic, and what is the non-verbal communication that is effective online. The benefits of this exercise were extremely rewarding as students in such difficult times got placed in good companies. We also invited a lot of video assignments and gave them feedback. One of our speakers was speaking about feedback. Dr. Bhavani, she also spoke about the fact that one needs to give it uh, quickly. So I think this helped. Also, I think something which was very important is demonstrating etiquette by example. Most of the times, after our online sessions, we used to be in touch with students over WhatsApp and over email. I think displaying the kind of etiquette in through email etiquette, through emails and through WhatsApp, and following the etiquette, following professionalism in terms of getting in touch with the students and displaying it and demonstrating it by way of an example. I think it helps students to pick up from us. So this is something which we tried at Kohinoor Business School. The next area I would like to touch upon is techniques that were used to supplement teaching. Apart from what we taught in the virtual classroom, we also, like someone has pointed out in the presentations, shared articles, shared videos. We also shared useful links. Uh, Dr. Preeti Shirodkar and I also share a lot of apps with students, information about apps, and also via WhatsApp as to what are the games that they could play to improve their vocabulary. I would also like to take this opportunity to mention the importance of one-on-one online mentoring. I have a student which I have been mentoring for the last 6 months. The person could not construct grammatical sentences. I mean, using the subject, verb, nothing. However, with online one-on-one mentoring, with Zoom calls, with probably phone calls, that has his proficiency in the language and communication has improved drastically. The next area that I would like to touch upon is something which is extremely close to my heart, is how did the academic fraternity benefit out of this exercise? The amount of blogs, the amount of the amount of content that has got shared on social media, the fact that educators are now part of various communities on Facebook. I think WhatsApp, for example, became that kind of virtual staff room where where teachers could share what methods work for them, what methods work for others. And this kind of interdisciplinary idea exchange happened through social media. Also, I think bodies like British Council and Cambridge English put on a lot of resources, free resources over the internet, and those were something which academicians used in designing session plans, in designing lesson plans. Dr. Hutoxi touched upon various lesson plans. British Council has been kind enough to share these resources with the with teachers, where they have a clear distinction of how a lesson should be taught online and how the same lesson could be taught offline. So I think that is something which happened during the pandemic. Uh, Now, where do we go from here? What is the way ahead as I see it? I think adversity brought out the best in both the teachers and learners. The amount of quality webinars that some of us have attended it doesn't have a precedent. So this practice of sharing is with relatively less strain on resources will continue. So this is going to be the way ahead. Also, I think blended learning is going to be the way ahead. Some of us have realized that some sessions can easily be conducted online and some content needs that kind of offline face-to-face interaction. So that will continue to happen. Uh, Also, in terms of research and innovation, I think only the premier institutes prioritize research and innovation. The others, in most other institutes, teachers also teach and do research. I think the amount of research papers that academicians have come out with is stupendous. The new normal, according to me, will be a very rewarding time in terms of both teaching and learning. Uh, the kind of connections that students have made with teachers across the globe. Earlier, there was only LinkedIn, but now they have connected. The connections have been wider. So, coming to the end of my presentation, uh, I would like to quote from a particular video which was uploaded by the Lead India campaign in 2007, where Amitabh Bachchan, who's the lead of the campaign, says, and I quote, "History, they say, is a bad motorist. It rarely ever signals its intentions when it's taking a turn." This, according to me, this new normal is that rarely ever event moment. History is turning a page. I think we have to brace ourselves as academicians for extremely exciting times that are to come.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Minoti. Thank you, Minoti. And so extremely interesting papers from all the four presenters. And I'm sure there would be a lot of questions. I mean, the sense, it's been a kind of a time travel for me, and I can identify with what Dr. Bhavani said, the Gothic. Yes, that is exactly how I would describe my initial feeling, very Gothic. You're staring into that empty screen. But slowly, I think gradually, with the adapt cooperation of the students, we got better hang of the technology. And it's so reassuring now that by the end of the first semester, our students feel empowered, and we feel that it is not, we feel that it is really quite an involving and interacting space. And of course, the number of people, so many organizations have been generous, and there have been so many resources available free to both the teaching fraternity as well as the students. So now the floor is open for questions. If you'd like to ask the questions to a particular speaker, please, if you're putting it in the chat box or in muting yourself, please make sure if you want a particular speaker to answer that question, or it can be answered by any of the four speakers who presented today.
I think I would like to take Mala ma'am's question. She's asked me a question as working examples of how I use Pomodoro method. So if I have maybe a task to read a book, for example, because I also teach literature and language. So what I do is I give myself at least 20 minutes in a day to read at least 50 pages or maybe less than that. And then I take breaks in between. Like I kind of break down those hours. One task, I break it down into mini tasks and I give breaks in between. And that is how I'm able to read at least 50 pages a day. That is how I use the Pomodoro method. And I also encourage my students to do that. And they have been having a really fantastic time using that method. Though many of them have said that they have used a similar sort of a method, but they did not know that this particular method, this time management method, it had a terminology. So this is something I would like to share. Thank you for your question, Mala ma'am.
Thank you, Vanita.
So Pearl wants to know, where does the word Pomodoro originate?
I may not be able to answer that question as a whole because I mean, I don't know how do I answer that, but I think I'm really sorry about that. I just came across this word via a tweet, so it just stuck with me. And I asked the tweeter, I asked the Twitter person, I was like, what does this mean? And that is how she told me that this is what the method is about. I'm so sorry, I could not give you the origin of the word.
Any more questions?
Dr. Seema, may I ask another?
Yes, sure, Dr. Mala, please go ahead.
I thought it would be very interesting to do perhaps any one of the four speakers might have tried this out. But I thought it would be very interesting to do a comparative kind of survey of the responses to online teaching of the new entrants whom we have never met and we're meeting only virtually, and to the present SY and TYs who know us already. And has this had any impact or effect on the reception on the part of the students? Because in many ways, the students are already used to the teacher, although we are continuing with an online method. So I was just wondering, perhaps Dr. Lakshmi, whether
Yes.
kind of try to get this kind of feedback from, you may be using exactly the same method of conducting classes online, but has the reception differed between the first?
Yes, it has. It has, Dr. Mala. And that was a very fascinating kind of feedback for me. The first years have vociferously voted for classroom interaction because for them it is the whole experience of being on campus, away from the school environment, making new friends, experiencing the fun of college life that was denied to them. So I think most of the students who voted for classroom teaching were the first years because they did not get to enjoy the college fest, the whole bunking a lecture, meeting out of campus. That whole experience of college life was denied to them, and they have voted for classroom teaching more as something that they really miss. But the second year and third year students have been very serious about their academics and they have enjoyed the online classes. They have enjoyed them for the flexibility that it gave them, the time that they have saved in traveling, the fact that all their materials are in one place. And they have really done very well in their classroom presentations. Even the first years have done very well in their classroom presentations, where they shared my view, their view of, their view of themselves and life at large for the communication skills in English project. They have done an excellent job. So yeah, it was a very interesting eye opener to compare the first year and the second year and third year feedback. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Lakshmi. Ruxana has a question and she wishes to know to what extent are your universities helpful with materials, tutorials, etc. Or are you simply left to make your own discoveries and see if and how they work in online environment? So what has been the experience of the speakers regarding material to be used online and how helpful were the universities or institutions?
Could I take that question?
Yes, sure. Please, Vinati.
Yeah. Roxana ma'am, like ma'am has also said in the chat box that our college has supported us with library resources, but I think primarily with communication, it has been a lot of experimentation that is happening. So we have by ourselves kind of uh, tried to search for material. We have ourselves discovered some new ways of engaging with the learners. There has not been too much of support, I think, from the universities. And since Dr. Shirodkar and I comprise the communication department, we have been sharing techniques with each other. But there Or, we have probably learned, like I said, even in my presentation, some techniques of other researchers or other educationists, which we have probably tried to introduce in our classes.
Minoti, there's another question for you. One of the persons here wishes to know what kind of material is being provided by the British Council.
Yeah, although I will not be able to touch upon the specific link, what I did is, when I was doing my research, I surfed the internet. I surfed British Council resources site. So there I found a lot of lesson plans, like I highlighted in my presentation, which again were available under certain tabs. Many people have uploaded this. Also, one more interesting forum that I found was World for Better Learning. This is by University of Cambridge, World for Better Learning, where again teachers have shared a lot of techniques that have helped them. So the British Council ones, just did a general search on the British Council website, but this was a specific forum, and it also doubles up like doubles up like a blog, World for Better Learning. That is by University of Cambridge.
Dr. Sharma, if I may also respond to that question from Roxana. Yeah, just wanted to say that our college, before we began our online teaching, our college gave us a week-long hands-on workshop from 9 a.m. in the morning to 7 p.m. in the evening, a very rigorous hands-on training workshop. And our own teachers, our own colleagues were our resource persons from the computer science, IT, economics and chemistry departments, to name just a few. But they did a great job, and they gave us what we wanted. And we were able to develop that confidence of, actually using these forums and make our lectures online more interactive. Many of the things that have been spoken of in the plenary session were also introduced to us in these sessions. Yeah, thank you.
Ma'am, if I could add a little to the question that was being asked, if the universities have provided any support. I think my own college, they did provide support, but I felt that I and most of my teachers, my colleagues who are teaching in this college, they felt it was not adequate. In the sense, a lot of us, my own department, we teach English language students. So I feel when you're teaching a language, when you're teaching English language, there are a lot of games, a lot of activities which you need to devise. So I felt like that wasn't enough, but they did provide us with workshops, with seminars. They also encourage us to go and attend seminars, attend webinars specifically. So I think that's about it from my end. Thank you.
So I think we have come to the end of our time. Organizers, can we take up more questions, or have we reached the time limit?
We could take a couple more if at all.
Okay.
Maybe one or two.
Okay, we'll take one or two more, but there is also in the chat box a link, a feedback form. Kindly attend to that as well. So I will take up, there's a question from Gauri, and the first question is, it says is addressed to Vinita. And what percentage of teachers were dissatisfied with online method? And then any presenter, will there be a tendency to flip back to being digital immigrants once we are over this phase?
Thank you for that question. I would like to say it was 50-50. It was a very mixed reaction. So there were some teachers who preferred offline learning, some teachers preferred online learning, depending on what situation they have been put in. Like some teachers, they live really far from the college, from the school. So they found it easier to take lectures online. Also, they felt the timings were proper. They were quite, able to take lectures online. Also, they were able to share things online, because in an offline approach, in an offline classroom, I think there was one of the presenters who mentioned that she never used PPTs in her class. Talking about my take on this, I did use PPTs, but my PPTs were not very interactive. Like I couldn't use Mentimeter in class, because it will be like, because if the principal walks in when I'm taking my lecture, she will actually be shocked to see students on their phones. And, that is not something which I would like to do in a class, in a face-to-face teaching classroom. So yeah, thank you.
This might just change when we start physical classes again. And we might, in fact, we are requesting our students to access their phone. So I think that's the end to the questions here. A very informative session, and congratulations to the organizers. I really look forward to the session tomorrow. So over to, would Huda like to take over from here?
Yeah, I'll take over from here.
Good. Yes, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Seema. Thank you to all the paper presenters. There was a very interesting and diverse set of views, resources, and ideas which came up. Thank you to all the participants because they have been raising some interesting questions and sharing their own experiences. So I think, like Dr. Lakshmi pointed out, this has been a good forum to come together and exchange our ideas and to get a reassurance that we are all moving in a direction which is the best we can do. Yes, so having said that, it has been a very enjoyable evening, and we wish you a happy rest of the evening, and we will see you tomorrow. Like today, we would like to begin on time, so kindly log in. We open the link at 2:45. Also, a very great thank you to everybody who's on the platform. Have a great day.
Thank you
Don't
so
forget
much for the opportunity.
yes, please don't forget the feedback.
Done already.
Thank you, Dr. Seema, for very effectively managing the entire session and time, and to the presenters. Really enjoyed all your papers.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Dr.
so much.
Pandurang, for having me here.
Thank you.
See you.
Just would like to remind the participants that we would like you to fill the feedback form on both days.
Yes, yes.
You're eligible for a attendance certificate.
Also request the core organizing team to please wait on for a few moments. Glad you liked it, Sneha.
Thank you, Dr. Suvarna, for joining this afternoon. Looking forward to meeting you again online tomorrow. Dr. Suvarna?
Yes, Mala.
Thanks for being here. Look forward to meeting tomorrow.
This is a very informative conference. The day I couldn't attend it the whole of it, but it was really very good.
Yeah,
so thank you for giving us the opportunity. Yes.
While the participants can fill the feedback and exit if they wish to, request all organizing committee to just wait on for a few moments.
I can see that Vinita is also